ready. I'm ready.
No, you ain't.
All y'all viewers who are viewing this episode, get out your seat, start clapping, make some noise, get excited because we got our first fight announcement of 2025, January 25th. David Benavidez versus David Morrell. Interesting enough, little, fun factoid. David Benavidez was supposed to be on the undercard of Tank Davis. Obviously, we knew about the rumors. He was supposed to fight Jesse Hart on that card. However, he decided that he had a better offer in David Morrell, and he decided to take that fight. Now, before I say anything, I do want to say that the source of this article is Mike Coppinger of ESPN. And this is going to be a really good fight, Breezy. I mean, if I'm going to be honest with you, David Morrell, one of those up and coming prospects, obviously he's been hot for a very long time. And then David Benavidez, when you really think about it, he's been tearing through everybody that he's fought. Now, this fight is going to be taking place in Las Vegas, Nevada. And there was a time when we'd complain about how every single fight was in Las Vegas. Now it seems like we don't get too many, and that's because of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh season, yada, yada, yada. Now, a lot of people are going to ask, well, how do y'all feel about this fight? A lot of people are excited about this fight. And don't get me wrong, David Morrell has been calling out David Benavidez for a decent amount of time. And I'm going to say this. Me personally, I like this fight and I don't. And I'm going to get to that a little bit later. But what I do want to touch up on is we got somebody like David Benavidez who's 29-0 with 24 knockouts. He just got done beating Demetrius Andrade. Now being up at 175, he defeated Vosdick in a performance that was good, but it wasn't up to the standards of a David Benavidez performance. Now, all of a sudden, he gets David Morrell, who's ranked number 4. Now, David Morrell, here's the thing. David Morrell hasn't really fought anybody worth talking about. That's the thing. He's obviously been a real hot prospect coming up, and I'm going to say this right now. David Morrell is a dog. I don't want anybody to take that away from him. David Morrell got hands. David Morrell is a very good boxer, and this is going to be a very, very good fight. However, the way I look at it, as of right now, the 175-pound division, it's got some decent names in there. It's got some decent fighters, and I just feel like if we were going to make a fight with David Benavidez, I wanted it to be somebody like Buatsi, Callum Smith, Lyndon Arthur, one of those types of guys. Joe Smith Jr., one of those types of guys where we can actually see how David Benavidez does against one of those contenders in the light heavyweight division. David Morrell is a very good fighter. However, he hasn't been tested. I want to see what he can do against guys that have fought the likes of Beterbiev and Bivol, because let's be real. They're saying that whoever wins between Morrell and Benavidez is going to be next in line for a title shot. Now, in some weird world where David Morrell does win this fight, think about it. David Morrell 11-0 with 9 knockouts. He goes 12-0, and then all of a sudden he's going up against Beterbiev or Bivol. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like they're kind of pushing him a little bit too early. I would like to see him get a better fight. Honestly, because he's at 175, it couldn't have happened, but I would have liked to see him fight Berlanga when he was at 168. That didn't happen. And overall, I just don't know if David Morrell is ready for it. But that's what I like about this fight, is that we get to see how good David Morrell really is. Now, before I even continue on to the splurge, Breezy, I want to pass it on to you for a brief moment. Your thoughts on David Benavidez versus David Morrell, Las Vegas, Nevada, January 25th.
I like this fight, and I think this fight is going to really catapult both of these fighters in a way. Now, obviously, in the past, these guys have kind of had their run-ins and kind of had their encounters, and have obviously even mentioned fighting each other. Now, there was a time and point where people was out here saying that David Benavidez was ducking David Morrell. And y'all know how I get down, right? If there's a fighter that's calling your name, all right, and there's a fighter that everybody's claiming that you are ducking, you address that. So by David Benavidez going ahead and fighting him, I like this fight. I have no problems with the fight. And I know for so long we're so used to the ideology that This fighter's not ready. This fighter's not ready. I mean, look, this is the sport of boxing. Anything can happen at any given time in that ring. Obviously, there is obviously the vast majority of what we expect to happen, but at the same time, no, this is still boxing. Anything can happen at any given time. I actually like this fight. I mean, if you how I see this dish, right? It's the same thing with Jerome Boots Ennis. If you don't press the gas on him now, when are you? And that's why I was saying when Earl was at 147, when Bud was at 147, if you're gonna fight Boots, fight him now. Because Boots is only gonna get better. You want to get a fighter when you can get them. And that's why I'm a firm believer in when you can make the fight happen. There's nothing wrong with having the fight happen early. Look at Canelo and Floyd. Look how early in age Canelo fought Floyd, but look what it did for Canelo in the long run. So there's nothing wrong with a fighter having a fight of that magnitude early on in his career, because sometimes fights like that brings out the best of them. Like I said, look what it did for Canelo. And I'm really interested to see what it does for a guy like Edgar Berlanga, since he just took a loss to Canelo's kind of like the passing of the torch. So, in a way, I get what you're saying, but I actually like that. I actually like this fight. I think it's been talked about long enough, and now they're finally getting in the ring with each other. I think it's gonna make for a spectacle.
A good way of looking at it. Now, for y'all that don't know, Breezy knows. I've been playing Undisputed, okay? And let me tell you something. I've been making some jumps I shouldn't be making because I'm not gonna lie. Some of them fights I be getting my ass whooped. Okay, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I just ain't. But the reason why I'm mentioning it is because my character's not ready for that guy, and he's getting humbled, and he's getting his brains batted in, and he's getting retired early. I'm not saying that's what's gonna happen to David Morrell. Okay, if y'all want to know what I think is gonna happen in that fight, y'all gonna have to tune into the prediction episode when it comes. However, what I will say is this. Okay, David Morrell is a very, very good fighter, and he has fought some guys that have are really, really decent fighters. But the way I look at it is this: David Morrell is the number 4 ranked light heavyweight. Okay, that's a big ranking. David Benavidez is ranked number 3, I believe. That's a big ranking for two guys who have just hopped into 175 pounds. David Benavidez beat Vosdick, who's a top 5 light heavyweight. I get that. I have not seen David Morrell beat any of the top 10 light heavyweights, but yet for some reason he's in there. And another guy I would have liked to see him fight, Willie Hutchinson. I would have loved to see that. Willie Hutchinson versus David Morrell first. And then we ride on to this just to see what David Morrell can do against a guy like that. Because Willie Hutchinson, top 10 light heavyweight, that would have been a good one. Connor Wallace, that would have been a good fight as well. And number 9, I would have liked to see what he would have done against one of those guys first. That's the reason why I'm not the biggest fan of this fight. The reason why I do like this fight is exactly what you said. Benavidez and Morrell, they've been going back and forth for a decent amount of time now. Obviously, a lot of people think that David Benavidez was ducking David Morrell. And one of Showbiz's videos, he talked about the whole Canelo duck. Like, I don't like to reference Showbiz too much. However, sometimes he be making some good points. He mentioned the whole David Benavidez Canelo Alvarez situation. Obviously, we know about that. I don't got to get into the whole spiel. However, he said that a lot of people feel like David Benavidez was ducking David Morrell. And this is a different situation because David Morrell, again, was never a mandatory for nobody. You know what I'm saying? So David Benavidez didn't really have to fight him. However, David Benavidez is choosing to fight him. He's looking at us and he's saying, y'all think I've been ducking this guy? Well, I'm going to fight him. So that ways I can show everybody that I'm willing to fight anybody y'all tell me to, unlike somebody named Canelo Alvarez. That's the message I think he's trying to use David Morrell as a message to basically say, y'all thought I was ducking him. I just beat him. I handled him. Now Canelo, ball's in your court. Why can't you fight me? And overall, do I think it's going to work? No, because Canelo has done so much in his career to the point where he doesn't have to fight David Benavidez. And don't get me wrong, would we like to see it? Absolutely. As fans, we would love to see Benavidez versus Canelo. We've been shouting about this forever, but Canelo has no interest in facing him. Canelo's going to stay at 168. David Benavidez is going to 170 pounds. The only way I can see Canelo going to 175 is to try to at least get the winner of Better Be Evan Bivol and kind of cut the line a little bit, which I would hate. But that's the only way I can see it happening. Do I think it's going to happen? No. But I will say this. David Benavidez has beat Demetrius Andrade. Good fighter. However, Demetrius Andrade isn't on a level as of right now as what we expected him to be 3, 4 years down the line. David Benavidez beat Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant, very good fighter, former champion. But Caleb Plant, after taking the loss to Canelo, a lot of people could only ask, well, was this like a watered down version of Caleb Plant? Volzdik, again, top 10 light heavyweight. He was inactive for a couple of years. There's always going to be that little asterisk. Now, here's what I'm afraid of. He goes in there, he beats David Morrell. What they going to say? Inexperienced. It's never going to stop, which is why I wanted to see David Morrell fight somebody like Buatsi, because at least with Buatsi, who's 19-0 with 13 knockouts, if he beats them, there's nothing we can say. There's nothing anybody in boxing can say. So I think there were some better matchups that they could have made. However, I am a really big fan of two guys having beef, settling it out in the ring. I think that's the right way to do it in boxing.
I mean, they're going to discredit him regardless because they don't want him to fight Canelo. They don't care for that matchup. So they're going to move the goalposts, right? Now, here's the thing, right? I told y'all before, that fight is never going to happen. Look, Canelo will fight the Avengers in DC all by himself before he go fight David Benavidez. That fight is not going to happen. Okay. Now, here's the thing, y'all. He's in a position where it's like he has to fight somebody. You know what I mean? Well, we can't get Canelo. Well, y'all said I was ducking this guy. Well, guess what? Let's get it on. So, and I already know if he goes in there and be keyword if, because I'm not finna drop no prediction spoilers on y'all today. No, y'all got to tune in for the prediction episode. Yeah, we're gonna make y'all work. But if he beats David Morrell, of course they're gonna move the goalposts. I mean, they did it with Andrade, they did it with Plant, they did it with guys. They just don't want him in the ring with Canelo. It's kind of similar to Devin Haney and Tank Davis situation. It's kind of similar to Terrence Crawford and Jerron Ennis situation. For all y'all that think that I only just hold Canelo accountable, no. So it's a repeated thing in boxing. So there are some fighters out here who can fight certain fighters, and they have the opportunity to either go down or up and weight and do that, but they just don't want to do it. But nevertheless, too, like I said, I like to fight. I think it's gonna bring the best out of both Morrell and Benavidez. You know, obviously, like I said, he's considered a Mexican monster. And when you say that he's ducking Morrell, I personally think he took offense to that, because it's like, I mean, look, I've been knocking all these guys down that y'all been lining me up, and this is what y'all say. So I think he took offense to it. And you know what? What do you do when you take offense to it? You handle it in the ring, and that's exactly what David Benavidez is doing. And that's why I said I'm excited that this fight is happening.
Don't get me wrong. Morrell has the style to beat somebody like David Benavidez. Okay, besides him being inexperienced and besides there being an asterisk on that fight with David Benavidez, David Morrell has the style to beat David Benavidez, and it is a good matchup. I don't want anybody to sugarcoat it. This is a really good matchup. Okay? I actually have a question. I actually have a two-part question, and I would love Breezy to answer this. Suppose David Morrell goes in there and beats David Benavidez. He pulls off the upset, okay? The first question I have is, do you think that Canelo looks at David Benavidez as a threat and that's why he doesn't fight him? And the second question is, if yes to that question, if David Benavidez loses to David Morrell, do you think that David Benavidez and Canelo Alvarez gets closer to happening?
If I'll put it like this, right? Canelo has even said that Benavidez was a nice fighter. I'm also say something too. Canelo said that Demetrius Andrade was a horrible fighter, yet he didn't fight him. And look how much easy work Benavidez made of Andrade. Now, I remember Canelo fans telling me that Boo Boo was trash, he was doo-doo, he was horrible. And I asked them, Is he as trash as Abney Yildirim? If he's that terrible, beat him and take his belt. He called you out of your name. He called you a female dog. He called you a duck. He called you everything under the book in the sun. But I don't think it matters whether he wins or loses. Canelo hasn't made up in his mind he does not want to fight Benavidez. Could it be that he sees him as a threat? Very much possible. Is it because he's at that point in his career where he just wants to kind of like put on shows for Mexico and his people and don't have to worry about taking much risk for his body, which he's endured for a long time? Very well. But I don't think, regardless of how this fight goes with Benavidez and Morrell, look, Morrell can go in there and knock Benavidez in the first round. Canelo is not going to fight Benavidez. Benavidez can go in there and get knocked out by 5'2" midget out the hood. He's not fighting Benavidez. It's just not going to happen. And especially if you look at the amount of money he was asking for a Benavidez fight, like if that's just one of those fights you just gonna have to say, we wish it happened, but it didn't.
The whole excuse originally was David Benavidez was Mexican. He doesn't want to fight Mexican fighters. Then we get the Jaime Munguia fight. The next excuse was he didn't beat any world champions. Well, there's Caleb Plant. I mean,
Boo boo.
Demetrius Andre. I mean, he thinks he's trash, but regardless, Vozdik, who was a big contender for the light heavyweight championship. I mean, overall, I just don't think David Benavidez and Canelo Alvarez are ever going to fight either. It was a fight that I wish would have happened. And don't get me wrong, do I think it jeopardizes Canelo's legacy? Absolutely not. Look, Floyd Mayweather is 50-0. A lot of people consider him the greatest fighter of all time. He didn't fight Triple G. He didn't fight Andre Ward. He didn't fight Lomachenko. He didn't fight those guys because he was at the later end of his career. So he chose the fights that he wanted to choose. A lot of people call that cherry picking. I have no problem here's the thing. Okay, would I like to see Canelo Alvarez and David Benavidez? You're dang right I would. However, if your legacy and resume is already established, you have the right to cherry pick. And as much as I hate to say that, it's true. If he doesn't want to fight them, he don't got to. And it's
If
sad.
you got, I say this: if you have a belt, no, because you holding up the division. If you want to do all that cherry picking stuff, do what Floyd Mayweather did. Get out the sanctioning bodies, retire, do your little exhibition golf matches, whatever, whatnot. But if you have a belt and you're doing that cherry picking, it's wrong because you holding up the division.
Look, what you're saying is not wrong. What you're saying is not wrong. Is it the right thing to do? No. But can they do it? Sure. I rather have it be somebody who's has a great resume, is going to retire as a Hall of Famer, first battle Hall of Famer, a guy who you can honestly say that in his prime fought some of the very best and did what he was supposed to do, then have it be somebody like Tank Davis who keeps on fighting BC level fighters. I'd rather have it be, at least in Canelo's case, he can say, I already beat great world champions. And look, he can excuse Edgar Berlanga and Jaime Munguia all he likes, but they're not David Benavidez, So maybe when it's all said and done, people will be like, well, he didn't fight David Benavidez. And that might be the fight that really kind of hesitates a lot of boxing fans to kind of lean towards Canelo. But regardless, Benavidez is a chance to etch his own legacy. And I like what Benavidez is doing because he's not waiting on Canelo. Some guys will just keep on waiting and waiting and waiting. Terrence Crawford ain't going to fight nobody until he gets to Canelo. Teofimo Lopez ain't going to fight nobody until he gets to Terrence Crawford. Jerome Boots Ennis, he's going to be fighting Karen Chukajan. But do we want to see that? No, he's gonna keep. I feel like there's some boxers in boxing right now who are too focused on one guy that they're kind of holding their careers hostage, and you can't do that. And I feel like David Benavidez is doing the right thing. Look, I'm gonna keep on calling out Canelo too. He says yes, but am I gonna stop myself from making great fights happen? No. So I do respect it honestly, and him and David Morrell, it's gonna sell. It's gonna sell, man. Especially PBC, it's going to sell. So the money factor is there. They got the history to make it an exciting fight. Both of them are super talented fighters. One of them hasn't been really tested yet. The other one is really trying to get his foot in the door and become a, a world champion again. And the winner of this is going to most likely get the winner of Bivol and Beterbiev. So the light heavyweight division is slowly getting more exciting. You know, it's slowly getting more exciting. And honestly, I can't wait to see what happens in that division and what unfolds. I just wish it was. I just wish David Morrell fought somebody who was in that top 10, like Willie Hutchinson or Connor Wallace. And I just wish David Benavidez fought somebody who was somewhat established, like Joshua Buatsi. But that didn't happen. Overall, this is a good matchup, so I'm interested to see what happens. And who knows, those fights I just mentioned that could have happened might happen down the line. So we just gotta wait and see, Breezy. But with that being said, would you like to wrap it up?
To Punch's point, we live every week. I would list out the days, but you just don't know what day you might get. That's why you're supposed to have your post notification bell on at all times. Make sure y'all stay tuned in with the X. Make sure y'all stay tuned in with the Instagram. Make sure y'all share, like, comment, subscribe. Tune into the Apple Podcast, Spotify Podcast, whatever podcast app that you own. Make sure you listen everywhere. Spread the word. We're live when we act and when we dropping videos out like it ain't nothing. So, without further ado, y'all know what it is. The Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.